Helping us go beyond the headlines on these new numbers live this morning is Professor of Economics at Portland State University, Hiro Ito. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me.
So there is this kind of discussion. We've technically met the definition, yes, but are we in a recession? What are your thoughts?
Yes, the current situation, we call it technical recession, as you say. But at the same time, we don't use this measure as the official announcement for recession, meaning that even if we experience GDP growth rate to be negative in 2 quarters in a row, officially it is not a recession. But the GDP figures suggest that we are heading toward a recession and the economy is clearly slowing down.
Yeah, for the layperson, this is a little confusing in terms of where we are because
Mhm.
we hear that the job numbers are strong. Unemployment
Right.
is low. We've seen increases in wages for people who are working. How do you reconcile that with the other numbers that we get in the
Right.
economy?
Right. First of all, we experienced a very unusual strength in the labor market for the past months. But at the same time, as I say, the economy is slowing down. However, those labor market related data tend to be what we call lag indicators, which means that they show the state of the economy, but with some lag. So that means that probably those labor market related numbers will deteriorate sometime soon, unfortunately.
So when we look at the job market right now, we've talked about this great recession or resignation rather, that we saw during the pandemic. You know, people leaving their jobs, looking to change careers, millions of vacancies right now. But we have
Mhm.
this slowing economic growth. Is this going to maybe cause employers to pull back on the reins a little bit? Are jobs going to be harder to find?
Okay. Yes. First of all, Tesla and some other high-tech firms decided to shrink hiring or stop hiring. And that's a interesting leading indicator, which means that many other high-tech or tech companies may be following suit. And at the same time, the decline in the GDP this time is partially driven by the weakness of the housing investment and also inventories. So those investment related numbers are usually reflecting what can happen to the economy of where we are. So unfortunately, in terms of investment related data, we don't have such good news.
Well, we saw yesterday that the Fed raised the interest rates 3/4 of a percentage point. We know that's going to affect housing.
Mhm.
How else will that affect the economy?
Yes, as we know, the Fed raised the pulse interest rate, and that is the kind of a foundation interest rate for other types of interest rates. So it's not just mortgage rates, but also credit card loans, student loans, and automobile loans, and so forth. So those interest rates will be higher. So which means the cost of borrowing from banks is going to be higher. So that can slow down both consumption and investment. So, but at this point, we are seeing some negative impact of raising the rate on the housing market. The mortgage rate was around less than 3% in the beginning of 2021, but now it's getting closer to 6%, which means that it is getting more expensive for people to buy houses.
Well, we know that the Fed has been raising these rates to try and curb inflation. What
Mhm.
impact would a recession have on inflation here? Are we going to see things get worse before they get better?
Right. To some extent, the weaker economy can help lower inflation. So high inflation can start slowing down because of the economic slowdown, and that's what Mr. Powell is hoping to see. But at the same time, U.S. interest rate is not just driven by U.S. factors. It can be affected by some other factors, such as the factors overseas. So we are experiencing the Russian invasion in Ukraine, and that has affected both food and energy prices. And food and energy prices are very difficult to predict to start with, but now it's getting even more difficult. and higher energy prices have affected European economies at the same time. So, to some extent, U.S. inflation, high inflation, can be contained by the policy action by the Fed, but to some other extent, we have some uncertainties because of the economic and geopolitical situations in the world economy.
Professor Hiro Ito, thank you for helping us make sense of all this and joining us on AM Extra.
Thank you very much for having me.
And of course, stay with Coin 6 News throughout the day as we learn more about how the new economic numbers will affect you. We'll post everything you need to know on coin.com.